is, as Dan obviously does, thinks about the group. Hey, what can I do to benefit them? What can I do to benefit you? And by doing that, you create a livelihood versus a deal. And so that's the new philosophy. So in this situation, one of the three people, I was consulting with a client, and I basically got as far as I could consulting with him, and then he needed a person like Dan, an engineering, statistical, reporting type person. So I introduced this gentleman to my client, and now they're working together. If my client listens to this gentleman, there'll be an opportunity for me to come back into the picture once he has his system set up. And Dan referred somebody that he knew to this client, and the client wasn't ready to look at product, but they thought they were. But they're just getting started. The point is, the networking is where the money's at. The money is at in the annuity, not in the big hit. So it's a different philosophy. My philosophy before was try to get a home run every time you're up to bat. Every time. The philosophy of my father-in-law was you get in their house, they sign the contract, or they physically kick you out. That's it. There's no in between. It's this or this. That's it. So I, of course, sold more than everybody else. Half of them canceled, but I still had more sales than everybody else. And that's the philosophy that permeated my life up until just recently. Now the philosophy is different. The philosophy is, hey, if this person's happy, I make less, but they're going to come back to me and I'm going to do more. I was seeing a gentleman actually this morning in Costa Mesa. And he was on a list that I had of people that had inquired from years ago. I followed up with him and met with him today, and he owns a development company, and they're putting in like golf courses in Palm Springs and real estate developments, big stuff that I've never been involved in. However, my children's show, a gentleman that's a documentarian that's working with me on that, I referred to him because he wants to get a corporate video done. Well, he also has an event coming up that he needs a real event planner for. Well, a producer on my children's show, I referred to this gentleman, and now they're working together. Well, I didn't ask for anything in return, whereas normally I would negotiate something. But the new philosophy, I'm a Catholic-raised Sicilian ex-Mormon who studies Kabbalah and practices yoga. So I'm trying to transform. And the philosophy is to receive to share versus to receive just for yourself. So by doing that and trying to transform, what I've seen is there's opportunities that never would have existed before. I wouldn't have gotten along with a guy like Dan in the past. I wouldn't have seen the value in a real laid-back, nice guy. I just wouldn't. I would say, what the hell? I mean, this guy's just never gotten his ass in gear. Instead of, my gosh, how beautiful is it that his life has been able to be consistent instead of like this. My sisters and my brother have all been married to the same people for 25 years. I've been married 4 and divorced 4 times, which is better, definitely their life. Whereas before I'd say, hey, it's a roller coaster. And they say, yeah. And I'd always say, yeah, but the roller coaster doesn't ever touch the ground. It's still above the ground. That was what I used to tell myself. Now I say, what in the heck is wrong with that thing? Because where does it get you? It gets you to be all by yourself. And it's the same thing with real estate deals. If you don't realize that there can be a benefit in it for the other person. Hey, maybe you say in that example that we talked about earlier, where the deal was worth 5 and it was 150, whatever the numbers were, you sell it to the next person, maybe at 10% under market. And maybe the deal closes faster. And because you left a little bit in for the next person, they tell a friend. And now you have 2 deals instead of 1 deal. In the previous business with my father-in-law, we never had any referrals. It was just, nobody's going to refer anybody.
What brought your change about?
Oh, well, the FBI kind of wakes you up a little bit, getting arrested, getting divorced. You have enough of those things happen, sooner or later, hopefully. It's like an alcoholic that almost kills somebody. Hopefully, I didn't have to kill somebody. So for me, I had to think, no, wait a minute. There's got to be something that's wrong here. What is it? And my philosophy before was this. What's your name again?
Brandon.
Still Brandon. Brandon?
Still Brandon.
That's right. I inhaled a lot when I was younger, so I don't remember anything. I wrote everything down. Okay, so Brandon, let's say Brandon's going to pay me a $100,000 fee, and this was the logic before, okay? If Brandon's going to put $100,000 into a piece of property, what does he hope to make by putting in $100,000? The average person.
6%?
6, 10, you know, I mean, let's face it, he wants to get a return, right? So my logic was, instead of putting $100,000 into a piece of property, put $100,000 into a relationship where I can teach you how to get 26% out of that deal instead of 6%. And then you have that logic for the rest of your life, and you know how to do it. You with me? So of course, I monstrously inflated the value in my mind of the service, to the point where if he paid a fee and did nothing, and the next day changed his mind, my agreement said I was paid in full and earned it the second you paid me. And I believed it. I meant it. And I lived it. Well, is that really going to build a business for you? You're always looking for a sale. You're like a traveling circus, you know, with a gun that you shoot and it doesn't shoot straight. Nobody really complains. But if you were there all the time, people would complain. You with me? So you're looking literally for a sucker. I would rather he made money, but if he didn't and he didn't do anything about it, my mind was at the point where that's his problem. Like somebody that buys a lifetime gym membership and says, I'm not going to go in. Hey, you don't get your money back. Today, it would be, listen, keep your $100,000, let's put it into this deal over here. I'll teach you for free. And we make money on this, we'll split it like Dan's deal, 50-50. You can't beat that deal. You learn, you're educated, you're safe, you're protected, you handle all the money, you listen, and if you don't listen, we just don't work together. If you do listen, we make money. And if you listen and you make money, what's he going to want to do? Come back again. But when you're used to making $1, $2, $3, $4 million a year, you don't think that the other way of thinking makes sense. So that was the challenge. It's hard for me to think like my father when I'm making on an average 1.5 a year. And my spike was 4.5. So, but you also have to understand, what I used to do is I would teach people how to pull money out when they bought. I taught people how you could legally pay somebody to buy property. And people say, oh, that's illegal. Like a straw buyer, you heard that? They say, oh, you can't do that. Yes, you can. I'll show you what I did. So I would find a property. My first house when I moved to San Diego was a home that was in San Francisco. It was 1.3 million. She bought it for like 600,000, and now it's worth 1.3. She was willing to dump the thing for $1 million. So I had a client that had an 820 FICO score, no cash, no assets, and no job. And this was 5 years ago. 5 or 6 years ago. Okay? So, could you buy property with an 820 FICO score, with no cash, no job, and no assets? Yeah, she actually qualified for 4 of those. So I was putting her into the first one, right? So she's buying the property, and at closing, my commission was $290,000. So I never saw the property, she never saw the property. She bought the property, the real estate listing agent got paid, the selling agent got paid, and I as the consultant, right, I got paid $290,000 at closing. It's very difficult to not do those deals when you see them. It's tough. So I did not do them. So at the end of the $290,000, what would happen is she would close, right, and then we would lease purchase that home to an end user. Well, that's great as long as the market doesn't shift. But what happens when you can't, that's a $10,000 payment. So basically, my mind would be,